Hello and welcome to Prime Lenses. I'm Ian. Each week I speak to a photographer about 3 lenses that have meant something to them on their photographic journey. It's unashamedly gear chat, but hopefully focused more on the images made with that gear than performance metrics and graphs. My guest today is Vjeran Pavic. He's a supervising producer at The Verge, and if you followed drones for the last decade, chances are you've watched some of his videos. Between him and Casey Neistat, I couldn't dream of anything better than a drone in the mid-2010s. Although I know him mostly for his motion work, he really loves still photography, and I was surprised to learn that that's really where his heart lies, and I think he thinks of himself more as a stills photographer than a motion photographer. Although packing 2 drones when you go away on holiday, Vjeran, I'm just saying. Anyway, he's a very warm and thoughtful photographer. We had a great conversation. I think you'll really enjoy this. Here's Vjeran.
It's still kind of sunny out.
It's still light. I mean, the sun's starting to set. Sunset tonight will probably be about 9, something like that. It'll start to go down. But yeah, we're very far north. So we're on I was in Stockholm last week for work, and we're basically on the same level as Stockholm. Like, only slightly lower.
I never made it to either places. I did go to Wales in like this little tiny town of like, I don't know, 6,000 people, maybe less. Saint something. I don't even remember what it was. But it was just like the nicest thing in the world. And it felt like it was at the end of the universe. It was just like, like you can go to the beach and there's like nothing in the distance. That was a while ago. Anyways, I might make a few other videos.
Well, did you pick up, because you were posting about the Fuji, the X100 did you pick one up in the end? Because I think, were lusting after the special edition.
I tried.
Oh no.
We'll see. So on the special edition one, I was online for the 3 days. I got really far into the process, meaning I was able to add it to cart. And then the first 2 days, I was able to like go through the checkout process. And then when it comes to like shipping and taxes, a lot of people got the same error, just like it was not calculating it. Oh, no. And then on the 3rd day, I actually got past that, but it still didn't go through. So I entered the raffle. I had my girlfriend enter the raffle as well. I had my coworker enter, like I had Becca enter it for me. And I had my neighbor enter it for me. So we'll see. I don't know if that's cheating, if I should like.
No.
Yeah, I think it's fair, right?
It's their camera. And if they choose to then give that to you for the exact value that they paid for that camera, then I think that's also fine.
Oh yeah, I was like, you know what? If you want to make $100, that's okay. I'll give you extra 100.
Well, it'd be far better than what you'd end up paying. For
No, I really, and I ordered the regular edition as well, but you know, I ordered it a day later, so I don't think I have no idea when that's gonna come. I get like an occasional B&H email that says, you know, like, sorry, we don't have an update, and I ordered it through a local camera store as well. I have no idea. I don't know when it's going to arrive.
There's nothing quite like it. Time will tell. Maybe Ricoh will do you a solid in the meantime and put that sensor or something similar into something the size of a GR, and then at least you'd be rocking.
It's super nice.
Yeah,
that is what we were playing around with this last week. Yeah, Becca is doing a little video on it, so I was actually able to kind of use it, and
cool.
I do like how tiny it is. You like need a camera that is that tiny, and the X100 is. You know, it got a little heavier over year over year, but it's still a lovely camera. I had which one did I have? FST. I had the 3rd version of it for a while. It was actually the camera that made me switch to Fuji entirely. Loved it for the longest time, and then I decided that, like, oh yeah, I'll get the new one when it comes out, and I'll be very naive about it and not order it immediately on the first day. So that was a mistake. So we'll see when it gets here. Probably never.
There's going to be no shortage of people who would take it off you if you changed your mind, or if you know if something happened. You know, if you got another one, I think you'll be fine.
Yeah. Does it? I don't know. Is it wearing off the fact that it's so popular? Is it kind of making it less special? Because it was like a little bit of a hidden gem. It was like not a secret, but you know, when it came out, it was oh, you should try this out, and it'll change how you think. Like for me, it really changed what I think about like mirror or just like the modern cameras and what they can do and everything.
Yeah.
I was still just rocking my like big DSLR at the point.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't know. It's still special. It's nice. So
yeah, I feel that way about the hidden gemness around the Ricoh series, the GR3 particularly. So when Becca in her video comparing the two, that she did that little short saying they were fanatical fan bases. When she referenced Ricoh people sliding into her DMs with pictures of their family and friends.
I know.
Oh right, okay.
Oh, yeah, she told me who that was.
Oh, amazing.
That was you.
It was. Oh, brilliant. Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
I'm glad. That made my day. It was funny. So my stepdad and I are big camera fans. I told my stepdad that I was interviewing you, and I was very excited. As I said in my email, I did a little Snoopy dance. I was really pleased. And so I said, and I'm going to do that, and it's Vjeran, and he just messaged me back. He goes, "It's not Becca, though, is it?" And I was like, "Right, okay, hang on." Like, that's just rude.
We'll get Becca on there. But now you're giving me like too much pressure. Now I'm like, I don't know. Do I have smart things to say? We'll find out.
You do. Well, we can test that out using science. So because we'll get to a Fuji lens. We could probably save that potentially till the end. I'm not sure. But your first lens choice is a Canon, and you got your first two are macro, right?
Yeah. Okay. So, actually, sorry.
Yes.
The 40 mil. The 40 mil one is I guess it depends on how you see it. So 27 equivalent is the 40 on a Fuji. So not necessarily a macro lens, but a pancake lens.
Yeah.
I got that lens when it like the newer version came out, and I was like, oh, I'll get it. It's 2.8. It's fine. And I fell in love with it. And I really the 40 mil, the first 40 mil that I had was a Canon. And that was also the pancake lens.
Right.
And I just like loved the physical, just how like the form factor, just like how small it was and fits to like most cameras, makes your whole package a lot smaller. And at the time I was on a 5D Mark II, and I just like needed something that is not as big as every other lens that I had. So I fell in love with just like how tiny that whole thing is. And then I started using it as like basically a 50 mil that you can crop in, fix your horizons a little bit. It just gives you a little bit more space around to like work with, a little bit more room around the edges and everything. And yeah, once the Fuji one came out, I immediately bought it, and just it's been on my X Pro 3. That set has been like really nice. So that has been just my version of the X100, basically.
Yes. Yeah, my version's an M11 with the Zeiss, the Zeiss 35-28. That I don't know if you've ever been to the Leica store in San Fran, but there's a guy in there called Wayne, and he got in my head, and he told me that my Zeiss lens wasn't good enough, and so I foolishly parted with one, and then realized that he was wrong, and that was silly, and so now it goes everywhere with me. It basically doesn't leave the front of my camera.
That is good. That's a nice setup.
So
I like that.
It's so good. I really love it. But the sensor resolution means I can do the same thing as you were talking about there, kind of like cropping in, and so 35 becomes a lot more usable when you've got a bit more behind it. Just means in every day. I mean, you get away with murder shooting raw on these things, really.
I think like nowadays we really don't have an excuse to talk about like lack of quality. Everything that we use is pretty damn good. It's really good. And then it also like the Canon version of it became like a very good lens for us. Like when we were just like on the ground filming events and everything, it had pretty good close focus. There's not distortion around it. You can still get close to, like we film a lot of gadgets and products and everything, and you don't want to distort those lines and make it feel wonky in any way. So it just became like this very, very good lens that gets close enough, gives you like very realistic photos. So it became like a lens that I recommend to like all of our reporters when they're going out on a thing. And I'm like, 40 is probably going to be good for you, because reporters also don't want to have like massive cameras with 24 to 70s, and it's heavy. It's not fun. So 40 is kind of like it's mostly about its practicality,
Yeah.
right? And then you have the 35, which is the standard, and then you have the 50, and usually those are faster. So you kind of have this like, for me, the 40 was just like, okay, this is exactly what I need. Um, Over the course of like last, I don't know, decade or longer, I've been trying to just make my gear bag smaller and smaller. So
Yeah.
yeah, my back are not what they used to be. So I gotta be
Well,
careful.
exactly. And also, if you're traveling a lot, because I find this, I travel a lot for work, and you just don't want to have a massive bag of kit
Yeah.
everywhere you go. Like, if you can make that as small as possible, that's the reason that something like an X Pro, if you're going detachable lenses, or
Mhm.
the M, if you know, are silly
Mhm.
and an addict like I am, but it fits in a small bag,
Yeah.
and it doesn't really look like much. And that's the other thing I think when you're using it, if you're photographing people, or you're with folks you don't know, like you probably occupy the same space in your friendship group that like I do, and most people listening to this do, where you're the person with a camera. And so people are kind of used to you now, and they kind of, oh no, it's, the camera's out or whatever. But if you're meeting people for the first time, it can be imposing. And if it looks like a big
Yeah. Yeah.
DSLR setup, that can be a lot.
Yeah, like when the Olympus came out, like that looked very retro and everything. I really wanted it. I really wanted it so badly.
Mm.
And I think there's just like a lot about these like smaller kind of retro looking cameras and everything. But I mean, when it comes to traveling, I'm still pretty bad.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I still bring everything. It's insane.
Just in
It's
case.
just like couple of drones.
Wow. A couple of
Most
drones.
like a few. Yeah, it became really bad. It's like, well, I want the mini because it can do vertical, but then the Pro has 3 lenses. But then what if I need FPV and there might be a day when I do this? It just became a lot. So when
I
it comes
hope there's
to
a
like,
product manager at DJI listening to this who's looking at this going, but we gave him the 3 lenses, so he didn't need to take all of those.
I know, but I don't know. Well, I think yeah, when it comes to drones, I think they kind of cornered the market.
Hmm.
They're gonna segment it in a way that they will listen to this and be very happy that I am buying all the drones,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In that aspect, they're actually pretty stoked. Um,
Yes. True.
but yeah, no, that's when it comes to traveling, I still bring a lot of stuff. Even like last year, I went back home for a while, and I wanted to do some astrophotography because it's just like a place where it's very good to do that. And my ultra wide is like a 3.5, 3 point,
Hmm.
I think it's 3.5. And for astro, I was like, okay, never mind. So my girlfriend was coming over like a week after me. I was like, can you also bring me the 16 1 point, what is it, 1.4?
Hmm.
Something like that. Just to have.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm always overpacking, and
Yeah.
yet I forget something. So
Yeah. Well, you do right, because last week when I was on this business trip, we were at a big conference type setup for a group of us working on a project, and there's 150 people all gathered
Mhm.
together. And at the end of it, the videographer, photographer they forgot to ask them to do a group shot before they left. So
Ah,
obviously, because I always have my camera around my neck, they were like, "Can you get one?" And I took my trusty 35, and I just took a 50 because I thought I'm
mhm.
not going to need anything wider than 35. I probably won't, I'm working. I probably won't get out that much out and about. And so found myself in a hotel in Sweden, stood on a thing near a window,
Oh
like
yeah.
just perched up, just trying desperately to get this, wishing desperately that I shot with something that had ibis whilst I'm dangling off a coffee table to
Yeah.
try and get, and also not wide enough because it's only 35 and it's in this
Mhm.
hotel lobby. 28 would have been really handy, and it's behind me on a shelf. It could have come with,
Yeah.
I have the Elmerit, which I love, which is also it's a great lens, really tiny.
Mhm.
Like you, I prioritize size over all things. It's like iPad
Mhm.
mini, small camera, small lenses, the f2.8 lens versus the f2, which is boxed up behind me. I've just sold it because the f2
Mhm.
was slightly longer, and that was just, no, it's just too long. Like
Right.
I can't run around with this. I can't get it in and out my bag quick enough. I'll sacrifice a stop of light
Yeah.
for that. It's just, it wasn't worth it.
I think we're just maturing. That's all I can hear. We're just
Yes.
trimming down the gear.
Yes.
But no, that is, yeah, I think just like, yeah, I mean, and just perception, right? When people see you with a smaller camera, there's just a little bit less of,
Yeah.
they're not intimidated, or it just like it tells a lot about you as a photographer as well. Um, but yeah, the Rico one is tiny. Like I didn't realize actually how small it was. I started using it a little bit and I was like, oh, this is fantastic. And then there is like a photographer that I follow too, and she does a lot of the BTS kind of point of view videos, and it was just very interesting. Like I am not very used to using a touchscreen on a camera for some reason. I just like don't have that habit. But the Rico is just like so tiny that your hand is basically on it, right? And just selecting focus points just by tapping.
Yeah.
I've been trying to do more of that even with my own gear, because I don't know. There's something about like how the form factor really makes you use cameras differently, and that's one place that I haven't really explored as well.
It's
like
a funny thing. You have to use the thing in the way it wants to be used, and I think products kind of betray how the people who made them thought about them in the way that in the ways that they work well. So you're absolutely right. Like the GR just invites you to kind of tap and tinker at things because the buttons are so small. They've done it on purpose, I think. Whereas like it's funny, the I had an M10 and I moved to the 11, and I feel like the M, they've even got different characteristics in there. Like I feel like the 10 used to work better on a fixed ISO and then automatic shutter, whereas this, until I set the metering to highlight metering and the ISO to auto, I didn't feel like I was really, I couldn't work quickly with it somehow. It didn't seem to work right. But I feel like once they've put something in like the highlight weighted metering, then from their perspective, they're like, it's the Mandalorian. This is the way. And so every decision around when you kind of unlock that, all of a sudden everything else around it kind of flows better. And I feel like the GR is like one of those. Also with the GR, hilariously, I used to go to things like you go to weddings and you talk to photographers. I had the original GR3, and I would always say, "Oh, I wish it was 35 field of view." Right, it's 28. I wish it was 35. And when the 3X came out, my wife made fun of me and was like, "Well, you have to get it now because you've complained about this for years." And so I did, and I love the photos. Yeah, and it's like, well done, well played, Rico, well done. And I got the 3X and I sold the 3 because I was a responsible grown up. And then do you know what? I was like, oh, I do miss 28. And all my friends were like, nope, you don't get to say that. They gave you exactly the thing you wanted.
I'm embarrassed in that regard of just like, there's always like, so lately when I go on my photo walks, I do try to just bring one lens and see how that goes. It's just like, oh, this is the one that I'm gonna like bring around. Then and in this case, it still is the 40 or the 27 Fuji equivalent to 40. But yeah, every now and then there's like, I wish I brought something else. Like there's this one building or one house in my neighborhood, and whenever the sun is low in the afternoon, it's like how to describe it? It's just like a staircase going into the entrance to the house, but the railing on it, or like the little, the wall next to it is, I know this is audio only, so
no, it's cool.
like hard to describe. But it has this like sharp corners, right? So when the sun is low, it just makes these little squares that are kind of paired with the stairs. Anyways, it just like looks very nice, like a more like geometrical photo. And I took that photo a while ago, but I was never actually quite happy with it because I wanted it to actually be like much more compressed image. And yes, like a few days ago, I brought the 56, or the equivalent 85, but the sun wasn't quite low as I wanted it to be. So there's this one photo that I'm chasing that is like 2 blocks away from me. And I just like never bring appropriate gear. And when I do, there's just like it's not quite lining up the way that I wanted. So there's like a specific time of day, a specific lens that I need for this photo. And eventually I'll get it. And then maybe it won't even be that good, but I think it will be. It's a beautiful blue, like a blue house. I'll tag you once I
post. Yeah, no, please do. I'm dying to see it now. I once did there's a landscape photographer in the UK called Simon Baxter, and I did a day's shooting. He photographs woodland scenes, and I sort of didn't know, this will sound stupid, but I didn't really know how to photograph trees. was the feeling that I had. Like
It's
somehow
rough.
my woodland stuff didn't seem to like have any character or depth. It just seemed like a sort of a bunch of stuff. And so it was me and my stepdad. We went on this day training thing with him, and it was great. He took us to all these really remote locations in the Yorkshire Moors near where we lived at the time. And what was fantastic was there was a bit where we were down doing like 15-20 minutes shooting in this little clearing in this area that he'd found. And he pointed across, there was a little like dip down and a river on the other side of the bank was a tree kind of isolated from all the other trees. It was just this one like birch that stood out as being like a different color. And he pointed, he was like, when it snows and there's this perfect combination, he's waiting for like the right sunrise or sunset and the snow. He's like, but I know it's there. And he's like, no, I will come back and I'll get that shot. But that had been on his list, I think, for a couple of years then. And that was 4 or 5. That's pre-pandemic. So goodness knows how long ago that was.
Oh,
he's waiting still probably for that shot, you know?
Yeah, trees are rough. Yeah, I mean, gloomy day makes it a lot easier. That's just like, oh, okay, as long as it's not sunny. But yeah, no, it's always fun to have like that photo in your head and trying to like chase it. That's what it's all about, right?
It's the curse of what I think we're cursed with this. We're cursed with caring fundamentally and sort of seeing that thing in our head. It's always worse when you can see it.
Yeah. Honestly, I think like and I kind of like stopped posting on socials as well lately. I just don't do it as much as I used to. I used to like chase that a little bit and cared about it more than I do nowadays.
Yeah.
So I am starting to film just like more for myself than anything else. Trying to ignore the algorithms and the engagement on what I put out there. So even if I put this photo out there and it doesn't do well, it's fine. I know that I've been chasing that one for a while, so we'll see how it goes.
Feels like you're into your mature rock legend phase of like, this is the 15th album that has a 12-minute lute solo on it. This is for you.
I feel like I'm still in a garage or underground basement phase, you know.
Yeah. No, it's good. I think it's funny. I've put in the newsletter for next week. The letter that Kurt Vonnegut sent to a bunch of students in like 2006, where he just encouraged them to make art. Like at the age of 84, he was saying, I'm too old to travel to your commencement as much as I would love to. However, all I can tell you is like, make art, go and make things. And it's the reason that I haven't looked at the stats for the podcast since week 1. Week 1 took off quite well, was doing all right, but I've not gone back because it will change the way I have these conversations. And ultimately, it's all just an excuse to print some business cards and talk to some people who I think are awesome and whose work I like, you know?
Yeah, no, it is a pitfall. Like, you know, and editorially, like at The Verge, we don't really, talk about analytics as much. We don't give someone insights into like, hey, this is how well it did or how well it was read or how many hours people spend reading it or anything like that.
Yeah.
When it comes to video, you're kind of putting yourself out there. Like all of your views are out there. You can just do a little bit of research and you're like, you can see what sticks, what doesn't. But it shouldn't stop you from making a video that you want to make or covering the story that you want to make or have to cover. So that similar approach is just like, okay, like there's stuff that we just like need to like there's stuff on the video that we have to do that reflects the website and area of coverage. You know, like the TikTok ban. People don't they don't really go after that content, but you know, we have to cover it. It's pretty important.
Yeah. It's kind of a big deal,
Yeah. So, you know, when it comes to video, you're like, you can see that like the toys that we play with and gadgets a lot more popular than some of the policy stuff, for example. But you know, it's just part of it all. So
yeah, but I think having an opinion is the thing that marks as a publication marks you out for one thing, and also so much more interesting to have an opinion than to just chase trends, than to just chase. You know, I'd much rather watch and sort of see the things made by someone who has an opinionated point of view, and they want to talk to people who are interested in that, than someone who's just blindly chasing whatever the trend is, you know. Otherwise, you guys would have been big in sea shanties a few years ago, and that would feel embarrassing and a bit cringe now. You know?
Yeah, I think it was one of your podcasts. Someone was talking about, you know, starting a YouTube channel and kind of trying to feed the algorithm, and then eventually
Yeah.
kind of being like, I just want to like I'll do it, but once I get to the point that I can control the narrative and do my own videos about things that I want to do, like that's kind of the where you want to get to, right? You want to build out that trust with the audience and your personality, and like you kind of have to game the system a little bit, but actually you want to get to the point where you can just like make things that you want to make and people kind of gravitate towards it. So
and maybe it's the circles I move in, but I've variations on that theme have come out in a bunch of conversations as well, where like people are just doing it for themselves, and I think that's much healthier, because like you're not going to be the next whatever necessarily. Like what would you even do if you suddenly became the next Mr. Beast? Like how would that feel? Like that, that guy, he loves the game, right? Like, and then you're up against Mr. Beast or Marquez or someone like that, and then you're like, no, this is all got carried away, and suddenly I need like red cameras and everything has to be robot controlled, and you just like,
I would not mind that. A few red cameras and a few robots.
Sure, it'd be fun. Yeah. You see, I don't have that justification. I'm unburdened by this being my profession, so it's all right. I can be an amateur forever. It's lovely. But on the subject of not amateur things, then there's an amazing Partridge style segue. So lens number 2 is 100. Is that also for its kind of close focusy macro productiness, or
okay? So this is purely like, this lens is the lens that when I joined the Verge, they were just like, here's the holy grail. Here's the 100 macro. It can do everything that you need, right? And at the time, we're shooting on C100s, so technically it's, I don't know, 135 mil, whatever the equivalent crop factor it is, doesn't matter. But that lens, particularly the 100 macro f2.8 L series, sort of cheap. I don't even remember what the price is. Maybe I'm making it up. Maybe it's not cheap. But when it comes to Canon lenses, I think it's on slightly cheaper. It has IBIS, or I guess to be correct, it has image stabilizer. So IS. There's no in body, but sure. Basically, there's a stabilizer in it. Super sharp. Just the best lens. Super sharp. Just amazing. Very light. It's just been that is definitely like my most used lens. The second one would be 17 to 55, also because it's stabilized. That was it. But like that one is like it's not a great lens. It's just like a utility lens. But 100 macro. I have 2 of them, for one for the 5D and one for the C70, or whichever Canons I used at the time. I mean, that's the one lens that we bring absolutely to every shoot, every event, everywhere. There's always use for it, especially if you're like filming smaller things that need a big close focus, and chips and components inside of another hardware thing. It covers everything, and it also still gives you that nice compression of the image. Good background separation, and it's a blast. So that is definitely like this is the lens that kind of I've used the most, and made me I don't know, just like I made every video that I ever made has a lot of that footage shot with that lens. There is a 90 macro on the Sony. I don't use that one that much. I don't know why. There's like nothing,
not a lot in it.
But for some reason, this 100 macro, it's been fantastic. I haven't even used the updated version of it. I haven't fully switched to the RF mount yet, so no idea about that one. But the 100 macro is, if you're like a content creator when it comes to tech and stuff like that, like you should probably get it. It is fantastic.
Did you use any of these lenses? Because when I was reading over your stuff, the thing that I'd forgotten, and I was like, oh yeah, because you photographed presidents. Like, how's that for like taking gear, and like, is that a stressful putting that bag together? Do you just take everything just in case, or were you, or do they limit it? In fact, what you can take?
Yeah. Okay. So, um, I'm trying to remember. Okay, I think I photographed President Obama twice.
Hmm.
First time was part of NBC and Recode. Kara Swisher was interviewing him at Stanford. I believe that was 16 to 35
Hmm.
and maybe 135, but it was a short interview. I walked away with couple of dozen photos, not a lot of photos. I walked
Yeah.
away with like some photos, and switching lenses in that environment, I
Yeah.
wasn't really allowed to, just
Right.
like swap lenses, move. I was one seat, don't move around a lot.
Right.
He was still the president at the time.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
like the rules around it were a little bit different. Last time it was a lot more relaxed, right?
Hmm.
So which was like a few months ago. At that point I was just going between lenses. I think I was like using, I don't know, like a Tamron on my Fuji because like the silent shutter was very good. I think I like used an Osmo Pocket for some video on it. It's just like it was kind of a little bit of everything. And my focus was
Yeah.
like fully on video that day.
Right.
Um, but yeah, from that second shoot, I walked away with like well over 1,000 photos, and then from the first shoot, I walked away with like maybe 40. So it was quite a big a difference, but
Yeah.
it was definitely 16 to 35 because I can think of I have this like one photo that's really good where Kara's kind of holding her hand out, or yeah, she's holding her hand out, but all the cameras and everything kind of make this like they frame the scene. Sorry, I'm trying to like put my
Mm.
hands here. They, like frame it so well with all the cameras kind of pointing around it, and then like that ultra wide like distortion just really
Yeah.
helps to kind of tell the story. Um, so yeah, that was that one. I think 135 was in there. I don't know if I went for the macro one. I don't
Right.
think that was the
Yeah.
macro involved in there.
Mm.
Mostly for products, I would say. That's
Yeah.
the
If
that's the
you
macro.
needed a very much a close up of a flag badge or something, then you've got it in the bag just in case. But
Yeah. No, it's very interesting. They had like this cover, like, he had a glass of water and there's like a cover on it that has the president's seal on top of it, stuff
nice.
like that. It was fantastic. Like that experience was insane. It was
Yeah. No, I
wild.
bet it's amazing. It'd be a fascinating thing to do. How do you kind of marry up, because you're obviously a little bit of a gearhead because of where you work, right? There's like that's
Mm.
a little bit of the attraction. But how do you marry that up with like also you've obviously got this strong creative drive as well when you're talking about framing, trying to tell the story. Do you have to kind of learn to segment those two bits of your head a little bit? Because you don't get a second go at photographing the president, I'm imagining.
Yeah, and I always walk away with it thinking that I didn't do enough, right? And there's
Right.
always like stuff that I want to do more of and everything. And even for the last shoot that I did with Obama, I walked away with like, I wish I brought the ultra wide, and I wish I brought a telephoto just to have a little bit more of variety.
Yeah.
I can tell you like how that shoot actually happened, but I think that I did, just growing up and everything. I really was, always a gear person, and
Mm.
had fairly good access to gear, and was able to just become technically pretty solid.
Hmm.
And that married it with storytelling and kind of journalistic approach to everything, like through my education and through just like work at the
Yeah.
Verge. It really helped to kind of put those two together, because I do think that for me personally, like making those videos is also just like an opportunity to make the best thing possible
Mm.
in terms of like how it looks. And I love high quality production. I
Mm.
love for videos that I make to be extension of like my own skills, right? So for the longest time, so a bit of background, like Verge folks, everyone is in New York, right?
Mm.
I am in SF, and we've had a smaller team out here in the past, and that number was always like 2 to 3 people. Right now, I'm by myself here, but Dieter, who used to be a host as well,
Mm.
it was just this good relationship between like the two of us. So like, hey, he's gonna write the thing, and it's gonna be beautiful and amazing and just
Mm.
well crafted, everything. And then it was my opportunity to just like, oh, okay, I need to complement this piece with beautiful imagery and well-made video and everything. So I always found it as just like an opportunity to like show off my own skills. So I think like those two just come together pretty well. Verge was always known for high quality production, and I think that it was just like a good match.
It sounds like somewhere lurking in the back of your brain is your version of that tree on the other bank, where you've tried some things somewhere and you've got like, when this comes up in this way, I'm gonna do this.
You know, honestly, when it comes to a lot of the stuff that we do, we're just like so dependent on deadlines and embargoes and everything. I don't have time to wait for the snow to be around that tree. Sometimes I have to make that snow myself. But it is about like how to actually adapt to every situation to make the best possible thing. So to me, from like the filming side, I was always able to like I put a lot of research in locations and just like color schemes and everything. That's kind of where I'm like, how could I make this work for myself the easiest way possible at noon when the sun isn't that nice, right? It's like, we don't want to film around noon because it's kind of doesn't look good. So, you know, I always like made locations speak for themselves. Whenever I'm like commuting around the city, I'm looking at like, oh, you know what, this could look good. This could look, and I like have this like map on my phone, but also mostly in my head. I'm just like, oh, these are the locations that I eventually want to film. And, you know, so it's always been like, what are the things that you can control during the time frame, and how can you actually like make that work for yourself? So a lot of times it would be like the locations, and then I like a little bit of grittiness, a little bit of just like drama. Like I like moody, dark studio things. Music in the editing phase speaks a lot. Like I always try to go a little bit of extra with music. Some of the other editors, producers, always judging my music choices, but I'm like, you know, I just want to be a little bit more like intentional with it, because we do use a lot of music. Not a lot of people do, so I'm trying to like make sure that whatever I use, that like it makes sense for the mood of the video and everything. So
do you guys have a tone, like a style guide, sort of tone Verge Bible kind of thing?
There are some like very standard kind of filming Bible in terms of, you know, just the frame rates and things like that, and like how we light our stand-ups and everything. But you know, things just gotta like change a lot, and we're trying to change our ways as well. You just don't want to like be stuck with like one particular look. Plus we have a lot of just like hosts, so you kind of want to like there is a balance between like, oh, you want to tailor to the specific personality and the tone, and you also want to tailor towards like what we kind of like look like. And you know, even like our redesign from the website from has it been 2 years, year and a half?
It might
now?
be about that. Yeah.
I remember being in well, it was around like an Apple event, so like September. Now I'm trying to remember. I'm very bad with timelines, but I know it was September. So it must have been like a year and a half ago. But you know, even that redesign just like changed the way that we think about color, the way that we do product photography. We turn a little bit more high key in terms of lighting, and a little bit more color overall. So that for me has been like a change too, because I'm always like no color, very dark, metal, shiny textures. Like I was more a texture person than like a color person. So yeah, you just kind of like have to adapt. You kind of want everything to feel like it's coming from the same place, but yeah.
I sympathize, by the way, on liking like texture and things like that. I love to shoot black and white, and I get in trouble from my wife for like, I'm making our children's childhood look magical. And she's like, yes, but you're making art, and I want pictures of where we went. So like I will take like a very sort of close in, I'm isolating like an eye or something and shooting wide open and she's like, but where were we? Where's the hill? You know, it's funny actually. It's a criticism. Years and years ago, I was in Texas for work, and I went to a motorcycle show, and I asked someone passing by to take a photo of me sat on a Harley, because I'd never ridden a Harley at the time and it was cool. So I sat on this Harley and this woman took a photo of me. She made a comment about me looking like a young Ringo Starr, which I think was good. Right, it was a thing. I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
And then I think it was the accent. But then I got off the bike and looked at the picture, and it was a perfectly framed photo of me and some handlebars. I know what I look like.
Yeah. You know, I'm always like, whenever somebody's asked me to like take a photo, like, sorry, can you take a photo of us? I'm like, I don't know. I think every photographer has that moment of just like, oh, I better deliver.
Yeah.
All right. You're getting a landscape, you're getting a portrait. Which phone do you have? Okay, you're getting all 3 lenses. Do you want portrait mode? Do you want cinematic mode? Whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And you just kind of like over deliver. And then sometimes you get like a single photo and you're like, well, it's not what I had in mind. So yeah.
Sure. You hope that they get home and it's that last walk with like Timmy the dog or whatever, like it was captured perfectly, like you hope that it was a meaningful moment, but actually maybe they were just out for
oh yeah. I remember when I was a lot younger and I was walking down Palo Alto University Avenue and that thing happened. Someone was like, oh sorry, can you take a photo of us? And my brother was with me, took the photo, gave it away, and he's like, yeah, they're gonna come back, look at that photo, and be like, "Wow, can't believe we got such a good photo." I'm like, "Oh, stop it!" But yeah, that actually moment kind of like stood out. It's funny.
Yeah, I did one of those recently. There's near where we live. There's like an outdoors center, and they bring kids come up when they're like uni age or whatever, and like half terms or whatever, and do a bit of work. And there was a guy. I was down photographing the sunset out there with my Polaroid because it was really cool, and I wanted Polaroids. And I made a Polaroid of this guy because he was telling me his life story of like, he'd arrived up here and he's in the middle. He's from Birmingham, right? It's like if you were to drive, it would take like 14 hours, right? Like it's a long way here. And and I gave him this picture. I've never seen it. I don't know. And it was a kind of a really unusual moment because of course you take a photo with someone's phone, you at least see it and then hand it back to them. But this, I was explaining to a kid who has no idea what film photography is. I'm like, right. This is going to, put this in your pocket, keep it warm and dark for 15 minutes because the chemistry needs that. And he's like, what's chemistry? What are you doing? Yeah. I'm like, no, this is going to be great. I promise. Never seen him again. Don't know how it turned out,
I'm sure it's fantastic.
I hope it was lovely.
Yeah.
The light was great.
That's the thing. I really, I don't really film. I don't really take photos with film. I did before, and now I'm just so dependent on digital and just the simplicity of it.
It's for mugs. I love Polaroid. I know I'm a victim, but I know also when they tell you, when the man at the airport tells you the airport scanner is not going to damage your Polaroids, he is wrong. It was in there for way too long.
Just tell him the ISO is like over 800, and I think
he told me it was fine up to 1600 and he wasn't going to have it. And this was a guy at Amsterdam airport. And I was like, no way, man. So next time I'm just going to pretend that Polaroid is like Triax. And it's terrible. It's 3200. I'm sorry. You have to hand check this. Hand check. Also, here's €5. There you go. It was Amsterdam.
Gosh.
Please hand check it. So we talked a lot about the stuff you use for work, but we haven't touched on yet, I guess, what put a camera in your hands in the first place and what made you want to make images with it, because I feel like you don't accidentally become a person who is waiting for the perfect light on a set of stairs.
You
remember where you were and how it came about?
So I do, my family has always been in media and publishing and news world. That has kind of been like my upbringing. I like truly was surrounded with just like magazines and newspapers and that entire world, right? So early on, my summer internships and everything was very much like photojournalism, taking photos, going to event, just that, right? But even as like a kid, there was like, a fire in the neighborhood, and I happened to be there, and I took some photos, and it got published, and I was like, ooh! So there was like a first kind of like excitement of just like getting it published, and but I think like overall, it was mostly like taking photos of family and family trips and playing with cameras and stuff like that. And like and back then it was like print photos or film stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to change films. That the parents would help with that. But then over the course of time, it just became more about like playing with cameras and all the cybershoot Sonys that were like terrible when you look back now. But there was something exciting about like all these different cameras that were coming out, and I was able to like play a lot with those.
Yeah.
So, and then later on, like I knew I wanted to be in photo and journalism, and that was just like a blend of things. Like I was never, I don't see myself as like a fantastic writer, and part of me was kind of avoiding writing for a while. Dyslexia and things like that just like didn't help. So like talking through images was always like my preference. And then over the course of time, video just became a thing that people do nowadays, and I started to just like experiment more with videos. And when I was working at All Things Digital, I became Recode eventually. We started off with like, hey, we should probably like do some video, and that became like more and more serious, and we're like getting better gear and just kind of like elevating everything. And eventually Vox or The Verge bought Recode, and like they handed me a cinema camera, and even then I was like, I don't know how to use this. This is a lot more complicated than what I had. So like over the course of like when I started there, it was like, oh, okay, this is just a tool to create a thing that I I was already doing. So like let's just make it better. So yeah, it was just being able to like be in the world of like photojournalism, being able to just like grab a camera when I needed. And then when I wanted, and I was always just like the kid with the camera. I was always bringing it everywhere. And looking back at some of these photos, it's embarrassing how bad of a photographer I was. But you just got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Looking back, I mean, I sometimes look back only 6 months, and the photos that I was delighted with at the time, and then I look at them, and I'm like, oh no, that was
Do you ever go back and re-edit some stuff, or?
I tend to be fairly ruthless. What about you?
No, I have like, once I realized, like, I mean, this is going like back a long time ago, but once I realized what like a raw photo actually is and how much I can actually change it, I was like, oh, there are some things that I like want to improve and go back to fixing. But I rarely do it. Nowadays, I'm in the sphere of just like as little editing as possible.
Yes.
Like constantly just like, and it's not even like the pureness of anything, or just one kind of like school of thought that I had to like bring up was always just like, especially in like journalism world, like you don't want to set up photos. You don't want to like create any kind of false narrative around it. So editing was like part of it. You didn't really want to manipulate photos in any way. And if you read like rules for award shows and everything, like really you can't like manipulate in any way. So it was always just like, I was always very much like true to that. And then over the course of time, like you just kind of have to learn how to edit, which I think I like did. But yeah, it wasn't. And now I think the lack of editing comes from like more like laziness than anything else. Or not even laziness, but just a different approach. I'm fully into the film simulations and recipes on the Fuji as well. So I'm starting to just kind of like pick those based on the way that you would kind of use film, right? You kind of have your film for outdoors, indoors. You have your film for specific kind of scenarios. That's kind of what I'm leaning towards now with like digital as well. I think I'm like basically kind of running out of time to edit, and that's like a sad thing too. So yeah, that I don't really like. I guess we started talking about going back to editing some photos, but I try to keep it pure as much as possible.
I feel like you don't want to be having to save it in the edit either. Like that feels like it didn't work quite the way you wanted, and I think that I've got a drive sat on my desk next to me filled with exported JPEGs. Like only in the last year have I started using Lightroom
Mhm.
because I was using other stuff. I was very iPad based for my workflow
Mm,
because it was all about portability, you know.
interesting. I
So
that's a video that I'm also
ah,
very early in the writing, but the iPad photo workflow,
yes,
I like still not perfect, but I do think
mm,
editing on an iPad is actually quite nice.
yes,
It's
it's
quite
very good.
just tactile, get into there with the pencil as well. It's just like
Yeah,
a nice
yeah,
experience. So when we talk about technology and like gadgets fitting into, form factors fitting in how we use technology from cameras to computers,
yeah.
iPad is one of those. And I'm like, this is the best way for me to edit photos. And I was never like
Mm,
a Wacom tablet person. I could never get a hang of that, but like just a Pro XDR screen on an iPad with
yes,
a pretty good pencil is magical. It really is.
yes.
I love it.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing way to work. And the only thing that switched me away, and it's the thing that's hurt the iPad in general, is the performance of the new MacBooks.
Yeah.
The fact that because my reason for having an iPad was always battery life and flexibility. Like it does so much.
Mhm.
It can be so many different things. And then as soon as I got my first Apple Silicon Mac, I just noticed that my iPad was staying off to one side more and more because I didn't need two 13-inch screens in my
Yeah.
life that did almost the same thing. And then the nail in the coffin in a way was once I sort of picked up Lightroom Classic and
Mhm.
all the plugin stuff. So I should be sponsored by this free and open source. I think it's open source plugin, but Lens Tagger is tremendous. And if you
Okay.
use old lenses that can't talk to the camera body, and so they
Yeah.
can't tell you, then you can manually add it afterwards. So for me, and also because I scan a lot of Polaroids and Instax film, I like to remember whether it was shot on like an i2 or a 680 SLR.
Mm.
Because as much as I have a one camera rule, it doesn't apply to instant cameras apparently. So
Mhm.
when I'm scanning all of that stuff, it means that I can put like the film type, the camera type. I've even gone to the trouble of finding out that the Polaroid Go has a 51.1 degree lens,
Right. Right.
like millimeter lens, sorry, equivalent. So, so it's you can put that information in, and the iPad version of the application is not that. They've got this weird foot in both camps, and it's
Mhm.
little things like from a workflow perspective as well, like being able to um, take your raws, set your JPEG export stuff up, drag it to a location, be that a hard drive, be that Flickr, and just hit publish. Like
Mhm.
that's cool. Like that should
Mhm.
just be on the iPad version of the app as well.
Yeah. No, there's definitely just like software limitations, apps
Mm,
limitations. Yeah. As soon as even when the iPad switched to an M chip,
yeah,
well, we got Capture One, we got Final Cut, we got some apps. I don't think Logic Pro is part of the. They can go both
yeah,
ways. But up until then, for video, we only had like LumaFusion, and then like
mm,
I think Affinity Photo was still
yeah,
working. But
yeah,
yeah, no, I hear you. Once the MacBook switched to an M chip, that was like in terms of computing, it was like the
mm,
biggest change in
yeah,
like a decade.
yeah,
It changed everything. Just like the way that we can do video editing and all that is like, yeah, it was, yeah. I remember that review when we were filming it, just being like, oh my god, like this
yeah,
actually feels extremely different. Like this
yeah.
actually sounds like a big leap. Um, yeah, good time. Um,
Yeah, and we're still living with it now. I feel all those rumors circulating about the next one. We'll see what happens. My stepdad keeps messaging me going, I think I'll get the new iPad Pro. And it's like, why? He's got an
I gotta
M1.
say, it's very clear that there's an iPad event coming up in
Mm,
2 weeks or
mm,
so.
yeah.
Everyone's talking about it, and it's, I feel like people are actually excited about an iPad.
Yeah. Well, it's
For
been
the
2 years, you know?
Yeah, it's been a while, and
Mm,
iPad was just like a thing that like hasn't really changed in a while, and now it feels like it might be like they're having not a massive event for it, but it seems like there's
yeah.
going to be a pretty big-ish event for Apple. So
Yeah.
it's weird that the iPad is getting its own little watch party.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm expecting a lot, and I'm really hoping to see like a massive iPad. I would love just like a giant slab of like a
Like a
beautiful
15-inch iPad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would be totally okay with that.
It would be cool. It'd be like that bit in in 2001 and sat having breakfast, and there's the big
Uh-huh.
thing next to him, you know, which in my head is always like a giant iPad, effectively, with like
Yeah.
the news
Yeah.
on.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Most people
Imagine the size of the pencil you'll need to go with that.
it's like a little bit thicker, so it just like fits better. But no,
Yeah.
I'm hoping for something.
Mm.
We'll
Yeah, that's
we'll
cool.
see. But yeah,
Yeah.
that is the video that I'm kind of like thinking about. Like, is there an iPad photo workflow video that I could make?
Yeah.
That is, I don't know, like the just the iPad OS evolution has been like kind of slow, right?
Yeah.
Like we've got the Files app, and it's like, all right, beautiful. Now we can actually do something. And then like, well, apps are not that good. Now we're getting there. Like, oh, our Adobe has cloud storage now, which is kind of good. Like, it's just like so many things that
Yeah.
I was really like living that life for the longest time. And then, as you said, it like the MacBook got an M chip, and at that point on, it was like, well, I'm just gonna stick to this.
It's very versatile. I will say you can get a lot done with an iPad Mini with USB-C and cellular if you've got that as well. Like you can get a lot done. I can do my job is talking to people and emails, like a lot of it. And so,
Yeah.
you know, everything else that I do that's creative and like image stuff is all for me on the side. But it can stretch in that direction and flex in that direction. You do only need to take the small thing out your bag. We do live in an age of wonders. Like we're very lucky, you know, to get to play with all this stuff. It's so cool.
Yeah.
So on the subject of cool stuff, your third lens choice in the intervening period, have you landed on a lens? Are we going wide?
I think we're gonna go ultra wide.
Nice.
You know, like here's yeah, I mean, I think that's it. Like we went through the 40 mil, it's just like the form factor. We went through the 100 macro, it's just like utility thing. I can do a lot with it, and it's just perfect. And then ultra wide is just like it's about the perspective that it gives you, and I do like exaggerated distortions and everything. Like I love it. Like even on a GoPro, like I love the GoPro look. I stretch it out so it just like looks kind of like, I don't know, it makes your head spin. But I love it. I can't get enough of it. Like 360 cameras, absolutely love it. It's like super fun to play around with. So I think like I will go with the ultra wide. My ultra wide of choice right now is the 8mm Fuji one. You know, it is a good lens. It's quite nice. And then before that, I had the 8-12 Fuji lens, but it was just like too heavy. It was like massive, just like a bulky lens. And then the 16-35 is just the for the Canon one. It's 16-35 full frame it's just the lens. Like it's great. I love that look. Yeah, I just have not been filming with it as much in the last few years. I think there was definitely a time and place where the ultra wides were a lot more popular. And for the Verge, it was also like a look very early on, like 10 years ago. We were like very much known for like those wide, low angle establishing shots. And it really like forced me to like kind of use it. And again, we had like it was a 10-22 f4. It's a terrible lens. Like, you know, when it comes to like build quality and all that stuff, it's like very cheap and whatever. But you just needed a like one ultra wide shot. That's all we needed. But I still love to use it. The Fuji one, and the reason why I'm mentioning it again is because it is a tiny lens, and I always bring it with me because it's just like it's easy to slot it in. It'll fit in any bag. I love the ultra wides on phones. Like I constantly always switch between that one, the ultra wide, and the main 24 millimeter one. So, you know, it's more about that perspective and just like how different that lens is from anything else. So, okay, that'll be my third pick.
Yeah, I mean, luckily these aren't desert island choices. Like you can move them around. Like it's, you know, these are just the favorites right now. Like the great thing is, 2 years from now we can come back around and we'll see if you've changed your mind.
Probably. I am. Yeah, I do get bored of things pretty quickly, so I just like need new toys to play around with. So,
oh sure, we all need those. These conversations are kind of me trying to like hedge a little bit because the only thing more exciting than gear is talking to other people about their gear. But the downside, the danger is that you then end up needing to purchase that. because you need to experience it, you know?
I know. As we were talking about the iPad, I was already just calculating in my mind, like, oh, well, the big iPad's probably going to be very expensive. Can I justify it? So we'll
Yeah.
see.
Well, if you need it for your work, like,
Yeah. Well, yeah. We'll see. We'll see.
it all depends whether you get the fever. I justified getting a special edition Nintendo Switch for my work when that came, the Splatoon 3 Switch,
Oh, okay.
because
Yeah.
it was very pretty and it looked really cool. I remember messaging Alice; she was away on a business trip, and I messaged her saying, "I think I've got the fever for the Splatoon 3 Switch," and she went, "Well, that sounds essential." And I went, "Good, I'm glad you understand." And then the next day she came back and it was Amazon and it arrived and I showed it to her the next day and I was like, "Look at the thing, isn't it cool?" and stuff. And she went, "No, it's really nice, but why is it here?" I was like, "Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
you were being sarcastic, weren't you?" It's like, oh no.
Yeah, I usually just say you have to have it. They're like, to justify it, I'm like, well, I just have to have it.
The heart wants what the heart wants. That's
No,
what we
this is
know.
a terrible thing. And it's very interesting because even like during this conversation, you were talking about the gear that you had and you had to sell. And that is a part of just like this kind of circulation of gear to keep us
Yes.
going. You know,
Yeah.
I buy a thing and I'm already thinking what this resale value it's going to be in a few years. Because basically just use that as a discount for the next thing.
Yes.
I'm very bad at like separating from gear.
Yeah.
Like I just get attached to it in a way. Like the X Pro 3 that I have, this thing has been to Fuji Center for repairs like 4 or 5 times. There's something wrong with it all the time. And it got to the point that I'm like, financially, this is becoming ridiculous. Like I can't just like keep repairing this thing. And part of me was like, well, I just have to like sell it. Like I have to like I just have to like get some money back for it. But I just love the camera so much.
Yeah.
I just can't get rid of it. And I know that if I do, I will be like very upset with myself. And so I just kept it. I like treat it a little bit more gingerly than I do the other cameras.
Right.
Yeah. So
yeah. The Fuji are the brand of camera I'm frightened to hold because I worry that like at the moment I've managed to talk myself into the one camera rule and just having the one digital camera and just using that for everything. And just if it was good enough for Cartier-Bresson and Oscar Barnack, you know, like it's good enough for me. Like there's, you know, what I need to do, it can do if I go to the trouble of learning to use it and really focus. And that's why I got great stuff out of the GR over the years, was because I lent into the limitations of this tiny camera with its amazing lens for its size and just really just used it and got to know it and was like, yeah, this is it. This is why it works so well. And I think when you're swapping and changing too much, you don't ever get to learn kind of what's good about it. But I know that the first time I look through a hybrid viewfinder, it's gonna blow my mind. And then I'm gonna be looking at that optical viewfinder and parallax correction lines and just thinking, what am I doing? And so it's a very fine line I'm walking.
It's very easy to kind of use that. You know, we mentioned it earlier, just like, oh, I wish I brought this lens with me, and I wish I brought this camera with me, and you kind of fall into the trap of like, oh, the more stuff you have, it just becomes like more of a messy to think through about like what I need and all that. But yeah, like the X100 when I got it, that was the thing, was like, oh, that hybrid viewfinder is kind of nice. Like, wow, I've never seen this before. Like, oh, the little preview of the photo in the corner, and then you switch between back and forth. And wait, this thing has a built-in ND filter. Like, wow, you know, there's just like so many little things about it that you're like, oh, this is great. So, yeah, I know we don't need all the new gear, but you know, new gear can be fun.
Yeah. Did you see, on the subject of filters, did you see that new GR that has the GR3 that has the little
diffusion?
Yeah.
The mist. Yeah.
The mist. Yeah. It's like a mist filter. That's a unexpected move. That would not have been on my photo bingo card.
Yeah. Most people were like, I don't know why.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to see how that goes. Yeah, it's noticeable. Like, you know, like you look through it and you're like, oh yeah, I see it immediately. But people love that look so much. And honestly, I never was into it until I actually started using the mist filter, and I was like, you
Right.
know what? There's something
Yeah.
about being in like a subway platform and having those like
Yeah.
LED lights kind of be a little bit diffused and it's a look. It fits well.
Yeah.
It's like not too bad.
1/8 or 1/4? Like, what do you think's the kind of the sweet spot?
Um, I am not entirely sure. The only one that I've used so far is the 1/4,
Yeah.
and more often than not, it's been fine. There have been some moments where I was like, "Oh, this is kind of a lot."
Yeah.
But there have been a few
Yeah.
moments where I was like, "Yeah, this is maybe more than I expected." Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think I don't know. I have to try out some other ones a bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I'm
didn't
going to
really.
embrace my inner prog rock album cover. You know, like
Mhm,
it feels
mhm.
like you got to get the right light in the right day. I had mine out this morning, out in the sun. It was quite a lovely light this morning over the plants and stuff. We've got
Yeah,
loads of trees around the house.
I definitely see it in like um yeah, like working in a garage with like an overhead
Yes.
light.
Oh, that would be cool.
That's where I'm like, oh, this is nice.
Yeah. Bit of
Yeah,
neon,
the
tungsten
camera
light.
that I been obsessed about, and I made a video about it at the end of the year, is the Osmo Pocket 3 as a video camera.
Oh, yeah.
I I was never I could really never expected to love it as much as I do. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm putting the mist filter on. It was on a
Oh,
discount
okay.
on Amazon, and I was like, sure, I'll try it
Sure.
out, and I've been loving it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that little camera is fantastic. Like I can't get enough of it. Every time I bring it out, I'm like just like happy to use it. And
Yeah.
we just filmed something on Friday for the Rico video that Becca's doing. Like I was
Mm.
just using that one. I was like, you know what? I think this
Oh,
will be
cool.
fine. The
Yeah.
quality is just already good.
I know someone who's traveling around the world. They live in a big truck. They retrofitted a big military truck, and they live in it. And I think last time I checked, they were in Morocco, and they
Oh,
just travel
wow.
around the world. And the Osmo is like the moneymaker.
It's great.
They use it all the time. It's the Pocket 3. I had the first Pocket, and I don't make enough video to justify it was sitting in a drawer. So that's one of the ones I recently got rid of just to
It's a hard sell.
yeah.
I never took it seriously because it would just felt like a toy.
Mm.
And now with like a proper bigger sensor and like a slightly bigger screen that makes sense, I
Yes.
was like, oh, okay, let me try this out. Yeah, absolutely fell in love with it, and it's great. It's super cute. It's easy to bring everywhere too.
Yeah.
So again, I'm falling back into like less gear,
Yep.
just like small little things that kind of like fit into what I need it for. So
Yeah. But definitely motion video or motion like moving pictures for you, because I think you're the first person I've spoken to who leans so heavily in that direction.
you
Probably
know,
more. You don't think of yourself as a stills photographer by the sounds
right.
of it.
I still like see myself as a photographer, right? Like
Mm.
all of like my upbringing and everything, it's just like always been like photography based. And you know, like my grandfather was a photographer, and that was like a massive kind of inspiration and everything. It was always like around photos and photos and photos. Video was just
Mm.
more of like an opportunity, a need, and it fits the world that I'm in professionally.
Yeah.
Um, and it just felt like I always think of myself that I'm like a videographer as a job and
Mm.
then a photographer as a hobby.
Right.
Um, I mean, I do both, so it's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a like I think it's like a healthy mix, but I'm still leaning more photography, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I do. I'm trying to um, just have like trying to like remember to take more video with all of my
Mm.
cameras, including drones, including the Osmo thing. Like I don't use that one for photos at all. I actually
Mm.
don't think the photos are good.
Mm.
The Fuji that I now have, the XH2S,
Mm.
still primarily a video thing, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to like as I take photos, I'm like, you know what? I like this scene. I like this framing. Let me just like take video as well, just because there's like stuff that I don't know. It's as a society and with
Mm.
TikToks and reels and everything, like we are also moving towards that space
Yeah.
as well a lot more. And I think like part of that has been like, yeah, like let me not ignore this on my personal feed as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I tell you what though, when I got that Osmo Pocket shooting 4K video for the first time, that's a shock file size wise. Holy smokes. I
Oh,
ran
really?
around. I got it Christmas like 4 years ago or something, whenever it first came out. And I was running around shooting 4K video, filled up, and the realities of dealing with 64 gigabytes of footage. Like, I haven't got room to edit this anywhere.
My project for like last year was just building out my second NAS. So
Right.
right now I think I'm at 66 terabytes of usable
Oh, wow.
storage and then a mirror. So it's like 128 altogether or something like that, 140. So I'm good on storage for now, I think.
Yes.
But
Yes.
10% of it is already photos.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, that's wow. Yeah,
I
that
know.
puts
It's
my
worth it. It's worth it.
no, that puts my couple of terabytes, I think, sitting next to me or whatever I've got to shame.
No, well, to me, it was just waiting for Prime Day and sales
Yeah.
and just like, oh, okay, there's a sale, time to get 2 hard drives. And then wait a little bit.
Right.
Oh, there's another
Okay.
sale, time to get 2 more. So it like took
Yeah.
me a long time, and I was like, all
Yeah.
right, finally got it. It's an 8-bay Synology, just like
Yep.
loaded up with everything.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, yeah, I mean, cloud storage would be fantastic, but we
It's
just
not practical yet, is it? We're not there from the transfer speeds. I mean, I rely, because we live in the middle of nowhere, I rely on Starlink. So the
oh, okay.
idea, it works brilliant. I've stuck
That's
it on a
pretty good.
massive pole above the trees. It's,
Mhm.
it's, I knew what it was defeated by before we bought the house. I was like, right, it's the only way that I can work from home.
Yeah,
But
it's
I'm
good.
also, it is good, but I'm also mindful of like how fragile it potentially is. And
Mhm.
as fast as it is to pull stuff down, like on a good day, I'll get 300 and something down, depending on the service. This is very
Mhm.
good. But up, it can be as low as 5 to 11. And
Mhm.
so if I was cloud storage backing everything up the whole time and that was
It's rough.
video, forget
Yeah.
about it. I'll post it. It'll be
Um,
quicker.
I moved to a new house, and my only I only cared about like if it had fiber optics, and it does.
Yep.
So
Yay.
I'm 1 gig up and down. It changed my life. But I
Oh,
will say,
insane.
whenever I go home, and I know I referenced it already once,
Mm.
home is Croatia,
Yeah.
and particularly like on an island in the middle of nowhere. It's gorgeous. But last year was the first time that I used Starlink.
Mm.
It it's lovely. Like it's
Yeah.
actually like, genuinely fantastic.
Yeah.
I before that I barely had any internet, so I know I'm like the comparison is quite wild. But yeah, no, I really so that is your primary internet provider?
Yep, it's the only one. We went with 4G when we were looking at getting the house. Like the cable connection to the house is about 10, 12 meg down and like one up. So just forget about it.
Yeah.
And then sort of we thought, oh well, the dreams died on the house. And then I remembered that Starlink existed and you could actually buy it in the UK. And so because Alice works from home, so do I, it had to work. So we
Mm.
went for the Pro Dish, which is the bigger one with more receivers in it, a
Mhm.
bigger surface area, and it can temperature control. Also, because we're in Scotland, it can survive broader range of temperatures. It can go colder. It can self heat itself, and all
Mhm.
that sort of stuff. And yeah, it's nearly coming up on a year, and it just works. And
Mhm.
it's there've been times when I'm dialing into the studio and talking to people, and their connection has given up because someone's cut through a cable in the ground or whatever, and
Right.
mine was the most reliable connection on the call.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of lag, but it generally speaking, you can
Yeah.
work around it. It's only noticeable if you're kind of like talking, like you sometimes cross over each other, or sometimes connections. Clouds are a problem, sometimes, but snow has been not as much of a problem as I thought it might be. Like when it was
Mhm.
snowing, I could still work and download stuff, and
Yeah. Let it
wasn't
heat
too bad.
up,
Yeah,
melt all the snow.
yeah,
No, it's been really good. Yeah, I only rented for like, I've just rented for like a month
mm,
or 2 months, and that's about it.
yeah,
Um,
No,
Yeah.
it's very cool thing to experience. I'm just thrilled that it works. That's, I don't need the 4G backup sim that is actually dreadful.
Hmm.
I just don't need to kind of use that, thankfully. But yeah, it's long may it last. Like, just
I know.
don't mess
I
it up.
I know. There is the elephant in the room. I was just like, well,
Yes.
a lot of the other companies that have been associated with a particular person have their ups
The
and
only
downs.
Yes, the only saving grace for me, I think, is that the stuff he doesn't touch very much seems to be okay, and the other stuff seems to be very distracting right now. So,
Yeah.
like, he's distracted by the cars, and he's
Don't worry
distracted.
about
Yeah,
this one yet.
the rockets seem to be run really well. They just seem to be doing their thing, because it also only works if you're the person with all the rockets. Like, this whole mad idea really only works as like a bullet point connected to, we've
Mm,
got all the rockets, what do we use them for?
mhm,
It's
mhm.
yeah. So, but yeah, fingers crossed. Otherwise, I'll
Yeah,
have to get an office space somewhere with a
you'll have
fiber
to move.
connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, basically, or at least I'll have to move to go and do work. Well, this has been amazing. You've been very, very generous with your time. I've
Oh
loved
yeah,
it.
no, this is like a perfect like next week you'll notice
Yeah.
there's like seasonalities with my work a little bit.
Yes.
Um, this Friday is good. Then like starting Wednesday until like end of next week, it's gonna get very busy. So today
Yes.
was like a perfect day, and
Yes.
most people, like everyone that I work with, I was East Coast time too. So I
Mm,
start early, but that means I can wrapping up soonish. So
yeah. Oh, nice.
yeah,
Brilliant.
not bad. Not
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on and picking 3 lovely lenses. And
sure.
we will keep an eye on future content and future updates. This
Yeah,
this will
if I
probably go out in
change,
like June or something. So you're episode 11, which is a good number.
nice. Okay,
So
11
yeah,
hours.
and I've got some other folks booked up. There's a guy in Scotland and a French photographer in London, and Dave, who travels the world with his Osmo Pocket, and just like all
Nice.
sorts of different folks.
No,
So
I think I love the idea and like the concept of the show. I think it like gives you like a lot of like runway. And as you said, like
mm,
stuff can change as well.
yeah,
I always like that, I think you have like a very good starting point. It's just like a good icebreaker, and then you kind of like
yeah,
go from there.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited to. I'm probably not going to listen to myself talk. It's my least favorite thing in the world, but
Mm.
I'll listen to everyone else who was on there. And
Oh,
yeah, over the last week, I was able to like listen to some of these as well. So no, it's super fun.
well, I
Thank
thought
you for the invite. That was super super awesome. So yeah, if you need anything else, just like please let me know.
I
Happy
will
to
do.
hop back on.
Cool.
All
Good luck
right.
with the 106. I hope it works out for you.
Yeah, I'll get it in a few years. I hope.
Yeah, you're on the list. All right, take care.
Cheers.
See you. Bye. You can rate and review this series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and that'll help people to find the show. You can also sign up for a midweek newsletter that I've started doing. You can get that at ianfarrell.com/sign-up, and there is a link to it in the show notes as well. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.